Hello there everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. This is the second part of the classic rock discussion that we had, myself and Felipe, featuring our friend and Jack J. Hutchinson Band roadie, Mr. Johnny Della. We hope you enjoyed the first part. We certainly had a great time recording the whole episode. And now it's time for the conclusion of that discussion with the second part of the classic rock discussion featuring Mr. Johnny Della.
I've heard a thing the other day which I find brilliant, which is the only real vote you have is your money. Mm. Where you put your money is you making a decision and you're dictating where the market is going. If you decide to buy a certain band that the media says they're not good, but if thousands of people are buying that band, so that band is going to become popular, they're going to have money, they're going to be able to, just stay on the road and do that thing. Yeah. So that's you using democracy in the real sense of the word. It's not like, oh, here's two options for you to choose from. That's not real. Yeah, but when I give you, what the media would do the same as they do with politics. They're going to give you a few options. Oh, these are the bands that we want you to listen to. You can choose. Well, you're not actually choosing. They're giving you a handful of bands to choose from, not the whole spectrum of music. When you go out and research and put your money, or if you don't have the money, put your time into listening to a band, that's democracy. That's you choosing to spend your time or your money or whatever in that band and that kind of music. So you're making a choice. And if enough people are making that choice, regardless of what the rest of the world thinks, you're going to make that thing survive for longer. You're going to make that thing, that product, that band relevant. And if you, as the consumer, so you have the power over, let's put it like that, because music is a product at the end of the day. As the consumer of that product, if you make it survive, if you make it last, if you put your money, your time into it, who can tell, who can decide what's the style of that product? How are you going to name it? Well, you're in charge of it because you made it happen. So if people who are buying that kind of stuff, coming to the gigs or just sharing the contents about those bands, if they say, this is classic rock for me, and then can someone write an article somewhere saying, oh, I don't think that's classic. Well, doesn't matter because you don't come to the gigs anyway. You don't buy this. You're not part of this. So it doesn't matter what you think about it.
Yeah, because I would say you're spot on with we want it to work. Yeah. Because it's not really about that double CD that came out. I would say maybe 70% of the people that bought it, like myself, have got 3/4 of the music on it already. I already own that music with the records that I buy and the CDs, and you're on that album, and I've got all your stuff. So when you appear on albums like that, I buy it because I want to make this work, and it's not just me that does that. There's a lot of us out there. We want these new bands to come through and thrive, and like yourselves, to carry on, to keep on. Like the old phrase, rock will never die, and it never will die when there's guys like you out there doing it. But we have to support you in that. So when these CDs come out, we don't need to buy them because we've already got the music.
Yeah, but people buy it because
we do it because
they're voting for it. Do you know what I mean? It's like you're putting your money
into work, and it's like, and it's a quality. You're getting quality for your money anyway, but it's not something that you desperately need. Yeah. But it's something.
Can I ask you a
that
question?
We want.
When did you first hear the term classic rock in your life, and how did it evolve from when you first heard it? Not to where it's got to now.
Probably in the 90s, I would think.
There you go, because you couldn't call The Who classic in the 70s.
You had Classic Rock magazine.
Yeah.
And then...
Was that the first you heard it, though? Classic Rock magazine?
Yeah, it would be, because I used to buy that religiously every week when it was out. And it's...
It's interesting you say the 90s. Sorry, did you want to say something?
I think it was... Possibly it was the 80s, because I used to read Sounds magazine, because there was always a thing of like Melody Maker or Sounds or The Enemy.
Yeah.
And it was always like the proper rock stuff was always in sounds. And when I'd meet someone that would buy, you buy sounds as well? Because that was always the one that no one wanted. It was always the melody maker and the enemy.
Right.
But it was like, you get sounds because they did all the proper rock stuff. And then from there, you've got the writers that went on to form Kerrang. But then from Kerrang, it is then evolved into classic rock, which I think was probably late, maybe early 90s, something like that. And I used to buy all of those magazines. But then that started to evolve because they couldn't keep writing about can't keep writing about AC/DC every week.
So that's where the evolving came in, isn't it?
Of course,
I see, yeah.
Then it's like, well, we don't want this to die, but...
Otherwise, classic would mean old.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
So all it is to me...
If it's not old enough, it's not classic.
Is you're playing music in the style of those old classic bands from back in the day.
Let's just add a letter to classic and turn it into classical. If you're writing a song on a violin today...
No one would buy it. It's too old-fashioned. It's like classical.
But just say, like, if you're playing classical music today, I mean, if you're playing the violin, playing a cello, whatever, and you're playing an orchestra, and if you're only playing songs that were written 2 weeks ago, is it still classical music? It's classical because it's a style in itself. It's what the orchestra is all about. So classical and classic, you can kind of relate them in that sense. So if you're playing loud rock and roll, distorted guitars, as Laz said, if you are analyzing the musical side of it, and you think that is what defines classic rock, you can call it classic rock. In the end of the day, I believe people need to label stuff in order to just make it easier to communicate. It's all about communication. We can just listen to a good album, and if it's a good album, I don't care if it was recorded yesterday or 1,000 years ago. I don't care. If it's good, it's good. But sometimes you just need, how does it sound like? We're trying to describe sounds, attitude, visuals with words. Words are not good enough. So it's just, you try to get as close as possible to something. If you said you just listen to a new band and you can't quite explain, you could come to me and say, it sounds like Sabbath and Zeppelin and a bit of the Beatles and a bit of Queen. Just say classic rock. Okay, I get it.
Yeah,
that's why we use the words.
It doesn't mean
it's funny.
It doesn't have to be controversial.
Yeah.
Interestingly, so we've now discussed and defined our own versions of classic rock.
Yeah.
But what I did in the lead up to the show is I actually did some research on where the term first came from and what it was used for. And you were right. It was originally used to categorize things. So what happened is that classic rock was a radio format that mainly featured music from the mid-60s. So we're talking Beatles, the Stones, the Who, the Yardbirds, all the way to the mid-80s. So back then, this was the 20-year gap that they were kind of... I don't know if they were... Well, maybe they were calling it classic rock because they were talking about stuff from the 60s. But the term was first coined in 1986 when it was, like I said, a radio format. And it was to try and get the older listeners of the people who liked the music from the 60s to tune back in and fall back in love with that music. I read this. Classic rock was an effort to canonize, classify, and commodify rock music for audiences living in a post-baby boomer economy. They're appealing to the 40 to 60-year-olds who enjoyed the Beatles, the Who, and the Stones back in the 60s, as well as the guys who liked Queen and Zeppelin in the 70s, as well as the guys who liked AC/DC and Judas Priest in the 80s. It's the classic thing because it spans a long time, which is what you were saying.
Yeah.
But they're still trying to identify a particular audience. In the 1980s, they were targeting the 25 to 35-year-olds because those were the ones who, when they were kids, they were listening to the Beatles and Zeppelin.
I see.
Then in the 90s, they were targeting the same age range, the 25 to the 30s. Then interestingly, in the 2000s, classic rock was targeting the 35 to the 45-year-olds. And in 2014, classic rock targeted the 45 to the 55-year-olds. So what we are so obviously seeing is one group of people being targeted as fans of classic rock.
I see. Wow.
Which from the stuff that I found would suggest that currently we're 40 to 60-year-olds who were around when those bands were at their peak in their heyday.
Doesn't it make the definition of classic so broad that it becomes pretty much pointless to debate?
Yes, I agree. Because
for different we were talking about 3 generations. We got 3 definitions of what classic rock is, but we don't disagree with each other in this. It's like, well,
and I've just told you that the term was first used in 1986. And the band who I thought were classic rock came, Guns N' Roses, came 4 years after.
So it can't be classic.
Exactly.
It depends how old you are, does it?
Yeah.
Or whatever. But yeah, talking about definitions and so, I think it's time for the first segment of today's show. And we're talking about the controversy of, defining stuff and naming stuff, who's right, who's wrong about it. And this is personally I have a kind of mixed feeling about this segment because it's my favorite, but I'm also not comfortable to entirely endorse this segment. Just say so.
This is a little breakaway segment.
So that's Laz is going to say whatever he thinks about, because Laz, the thing is, he's a good boy. He's wearing a nice hat. Everyone likes him. Everyone likes Laz. He can say whatever and get away with it. I think I could,
because I back up my opinions with musical knowledge.
Because people like you. I'd say you can just get away with it. I'm not quite sure if I could get away with the stuff you say. So it's really important. I think Johnny is going to... I don't know what Laz is going to say, because unlike him, I don't do any preparation for the show. So I have no idea what the topic's all about. And I don't know what he's going to say, but I need to make a disclaimer now. So if Johnny wants to join me, so I'm going to add your name to the disclaimer.
Well, these are not necessarily the views of Johnny and Felipe. This is solely down to Laz.
So that's our official disclaimer for today's segment. So, ladies and gentlemen, Laz Unleashed.
So in this week's segment of Laz Unleashed, I'm keeping it very relevant to the topic. This will be controversial because I support what's going on. So I will say that new wave of classic rock can't be a genre. I don't think that we can categorise bands into that. I like the idea of saying that... Oh, Felipe's doing his weekly walkout. Do you disagree with me that much?
No, I just don't want to be associated to your opinion. You can
so it's just me in the show.
I actually agree with you. It's not a genre.
No, it can't be, because we've just sat for an hour and said about how we can classify every other band to be considered classic rock. Yeah. You both made a case for Pink Floyd being classic rock. I've made a case for Guns N' Roses being classic rock. The actual term classic rock and the people who coined it have made a case that the Yardbirds and the Beatles and the Animals are classic rock. So how can we say, just because there is a bunch of bands, again, when I hear classic rock, I think Kiss, AC/DC, Whitesnake, Foreigner, Def Leppard. If that's... Let's just take my opinion. Let's just say that my opinion is right. If everyone who hears classic rock thinks of those bands, and they're now putting that personality onto another set of bands 30, 40 years later, then is it not like you're almost shoehorning them a bit? You're saying, okay, well, you have to keep writing like this, you have to write like these bands, you have to sound like these bands, because that's what we all identify as classic rock. But I'd just rather a new genre. What can we call it? Modern rock. I don't care. Millennial rock, whatever. Yeah. I just don't like new wave of classic rock. But I want to say, because I do share this podcast on that page, this is all true, and this isn't me trying to get out of my hole that I've dug. What these guys have done for the community and for the bands is incredible. It's a bunch of 5 or 6 guys, as you mentioned earlier, who have come together, brought about 20 to 25,000 people close together who all have these interests in this band. And what they've done is they've elevated it to the next level, and they've made these bands so much more relevant because they've included them in part of the community. So, just a massive well done and congratulations and thank you to the guys at New Wave of Classic Rock, because they're doing a lot for the rock music in Britain in the last few years. But I don't like New Wave of Classic Rock as a genre. And that's Laz Unleashed done.
Even if you say it's not a genre, it's still a community. So that's what matters. We're talking about all of this, and rock music, connects people. And I've said that before, and I'll insist on this. Rock and roll is a good excuse to get people together, like-minded people who want to, have a good time together. And it's, as Johnny said, as a family. It's a bunch of people who pretty much think in the same way and would enjoy being together for a couple of hours on a weekend and have fun.
Yeah, go see a gig, go see a band.
So the new wave of classic rock, for me, is more the community than a music genre in a certain way. But if they didn't name it new wave of classic rock, how are you going to reach out to people who like classic rock? Do you know?
Yep.
You say we listen to these new bands, we want to support them. Again, what are they? Well, they kind of this kind of, you would spend so much time trying to explain what that is. So
I understand what you mean. I can agree with that.
It's practical, and it's effective to just say that's classic rock.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it is that they could actually break it down even further. And the new wave of classic rock it derives really from the new wave of British heavy metal.
Yeah.
And it was quite catchy. It's like, that really was taking bands that were heavy metal at the time. So they've sort of taken that label as such and just to give these bands somewhere to live.
Yeah.
But you could break that down further, really, because there's bands like Aetherfield, Godsticks, even Empire. They would fall into the sort of the prog world.
Yeah,
they're prog bands. So it really, you could
well,
then
it's
break
funny
it
that
down
you say that, because I think Empire has loads of heavy rock to it.
Aetherfield are a band that they're really so close to like Stephen Wilson type music.
Really?
Porcupine Tree. Honestly, their new album, it's not like the traditional classic rock. It's prog. It's heavy prog. And so you could break it down further. And then within those groups, you would then have they are in fact new wave of prog rock.
Mm.
So, and then of course you've got others that might be like new wave of punk rock.
Yeah.
So it's like, hang on a minute, because we're now breaking off into all these bands that are these 42 bands. A lot of them have got different styles.
Mm.
And it's like, we can't give them all their own label. So let's just put them all in as one.
Yeah.
So that you can identify that they're not all the same, but they're all got the same spirit.
Yeah.
They're all from this kind of, they hark back to that era that we all love, but also we can identify that they are rock.
Yeah. Do you know one thing I find in common about what I find in common about those guys, more than the need to associate yourself to some sounds from the past, is the necessity of not being associated with modern music as it is. It's like it's pretty much like saying, well, yeah, lots of people are doing the exact same thing today. We just don't want to go down that road. We want to do something that for us is more meaningful.
Something that they love.
Yeah, I'm going to do what I love, regardless of this being contemporary enough or commercial enough or being like suitable for any sort of modern music label. So basically, if you're doing what you want to do, and for some people that reminds them of what Pink Floyd was, so they're going to call you classic.
Yeah.
And what's the problem with that?
I think
it's actually, I take it as a compliment.
Yeah.
If someone says, "Oh, you guys are, what you guys are doing is classic rock." Some people say it's blues rock. I take all of that as compliment.
Yeah, but
because it's so really good.
Yeah, because blues is another example that it is what's classic blues rock. I mean, you go back to, I mean, see, you could break it down even further, well, you go all the way back to Muddy Waters and like, but then you could go back and say, well, like Rory Gallagher.
Yeah.
But to me, that's sort
It's
of
so
modern.
rock and roll.
And it's sort of, so where do you draw the line? So you could break it down even further, but it's like, instead of doing that nonsense, because you're going back too far, you're breaking things up too much, just lop it all in as one. I don't particularly like the new wave. I think there could have been better wording, but I think that just comes from the new album, the new wave of heavy metal, and it was like, oh yeah, that was catchy then, and that'll do for now.
I like that. I like the fact that when you say new wave, you basically saying this belongs to this moment in time. Although I'm calling it classic, it's a new wave.
Yeah,
it's
but my
my
problem with the word wave is that if you know a wave from a sea, a wave comes and then it goes.
Yeah.
So to me, the word wave signifies temporary.
So wave would clash with classic.
Yeah.
I'd like to. If I was to choose the name of the album, I'd call it not the new wave or the new something. I'd call it the next generation of classic rock.
Or the new breed.
The new breed of classic rock, new generation of classic rock, next generation of classic rock.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it sounds poetic enough and sounds musical enough to say the new wave of classic
But
rock.
like Johnny said, it's been there before. In the 80s, the new wave of British heavy metal, the new wave of rock and roll that Earache did last year, the new wave of British death metal that I saw at the Black Heart in Camden a few weeks ago. So the wave is just a form, isn't it?
It's just, it's an easy... it's now becoming like we're used to it.
Yeah, yeah.
But it started off.
I think one thing we all agree is the community is amazing. The fact that people decided to put that together and they named it the new wave of classic rock, and they brought all those bands and all those people together. It's really cool.
By themselves, they do it on their own.
That's amazing.
I mean, do you guys you feel like a big part of it? Because you are, in my eyes, you're a big part of that. You're one of the bands that are doing it. Do you feel a part of that
I feel part of the community like you are part of the community, because there's different levels of association. Let's put it like that. I see myself as a big fan of rock music. But then if I'm involved in the practical side of it, which is playing music, I think there's levels of that. You have, the artists and the bands doing the music, and you have the audience, and you have people in between like you. You are involved with the community and with the artists working for them. So you're kind of building that bridge between... think about when you're selling merch, you're literally building the bridge between the artist and the audience and connecting them. That's a really cool point to be. And I think us as musicians, I think Laz has the same opinion, that we serve the music more than anything else. I mean, it's like... the artist for me is usually the main songwriter, is whoever is creating something, doing something. We do participate, we do create stuff, but I, as a drummer myself, I see myself someone who's working for the art that is being produced. And so I work for the community the same way you work for the community. So I do feel like I belong to it, or better saying, I want to belong to it, because it's really cool.
Interestingly, my opinion and my view on it is slightly different. The reason I play with Jack still, I've played with loads of original artists in my career, and whenever I thought there was a part in the road where it was never going to go further, or that nothing was going to change, but I didn't see ambition from the artist, then I'd have a problem. My issue would be that, well, where do we go from here? How do we proceed? How do we make this a success? Where do we build this? How do we build the brand? Now, the thing that I really enjoy about playing with Jack and playing his music is the music is so different. You've heard the stuff from the new album. I'll call the new album heavy metal music with a blues rock vocalist who writes songs like Neil Young. I mean, how many other bands are you going to compare and put Iron Maiden and Gojira, Neil Young and the Black Crowes with the guitar solos of Slash and Jimmy Page? It's unheard of. I think that his music is so new and so fresh that I don't want him to be lumped in with other bands. And that's not a disservice to the other bands because they do their thing very well. I just feel Jack has a unique place because he is unique and because the music he writes is unique. So I don't want him to be a part of a new wave of classic rock. I want him to be in his own genre.
But then you got the support of any band can be part of a community and take off into a different direction and go somewhere from there.
Yeah.
Those guys will still support you. That's the thing. You know, if you started playing events from a certain community, and people from outside that world who wouldn't define themselves as classic rock fans decide to support your music as well, then you're expanding. You're not getting out of something into something. You're expanding. You might say, well, I might be. You might pick an artist who is a heavy rock art. You can think about Scorpions. They're quite heavy, but they have some really, really nice love ballads.
Yeah.
And those songs can play in any pop radio in the world. Does that mean they're getting out of the rock community and becoming pop? No. That means they're expanding into pop music, into radio-friendly kind of stuff. Yeah. So they, you don't need to belong to just one place and one category as a musician.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I don't see a problem with labels like, oh, this is what it is, this is what it is. Yeah, you can be this and you can be something else. Like Guns N' Roses can be just a hard rock band for me, but it can be classic for you. Yeah. Because you're younger than me, so they're classic. Yeah. They're not classic for me because I was around when they were starting. I first heard of Guns N' Roses when I was, old enough to go out and do my research on the band and listen to them. So that's what it is.
I think, yeah. So I just think about what I said and I didn't fully answer your question. Going back to what Felipe said, the overwhelming, monumental support that you have from this group is second to none, isn't it?
I think it's important that you guys are in that group because the music you make is it needs to be somewhere else because of all the reasons why you said. But it's not just you. There's look at Empire. They're something a little bit different.
I like Scam.
Scam
are a great band.
Yeah. I need to do my research on them. They're good. I haven't listened to enough of
Exactly. There's a lot of bands in there that it's like the reason why it's important that you guys are in. I know it feels like you're probably just locked in with everybody else. And I'm sure a lot of those other bands are thinking the same. It's like, but our music is so much more different from just the normal.
Yeah, I'm sure every artist will think that about their music, won't they?
But being in this community is important because it gets you to more ears.
Yes.
It's like someone will pick up that CD and they'll get to your track and think, oh,
and hear it for the first time.
Yeah, and then it's like, I'll check the rest of this out. This just might be.
And even if one person does that, that's one new fan. Well, that's more not the ticket sale.
I love the fact that I can, even if it's not directly, but I can be associated to a kind of music that I really like, because I do loads of stuff outside the rock and roll world. We were talking about this on the journey here, that I played a soul gig the other day. It was a big challenge, but I do that kind of stuff. And I do loads of stuff that I love music and I love playing drums. I could be talking about Marvin Gaye instead of talking about rock and roll as well. I could be talking about John Coltrane. I love music, but rock feels like home to me. So the fact that I can be out and about doing my work, serving the artists as a musician for different genres, that's really cool for me. But the fact that the main thing I'm doing as a musician is associated to classic. It's like, wow, what you do is classic rock. So, well, I take that as a big compliment.
You're not only serving. Is that the word you used? Serving.
Yeah,
you're not only serving the artist. You're not only serving Jack. You're serving this community.
Yep.
By doing what you're doing. So inadvertently, you are, like you said, a part of this journey.
And everyone who's in the core of the group is doing that because they're feeding the community with new music, with festivals, and what Johnny does, with the merch and with the helping the bands out. This is really, really important. The fact that we have this. So in the end of the day, I don't think people are that interested in clashing about what the hell is classic rock, but we do need to label things in order to categorize things, in order to understand things better, and even in order to have an argument about it. We need.
Well, we live in a time where music can be produced and released at such a rate. I mean, there's a band, one of my favorite bands. They're I suppose you call them like a psychedelic rock band. They're from Australia. They're called King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, and all they do is tour and record. And when I say all they do is record, they release 3 to 4 albums every year because they go and do a tour of Australia, they record an album, tour Australia, but like 3 times in a year. And they just keep putting these albums out and they're delivering what the fans want. But sorry, my point was that you can get music out at such an alarming rate these days that if you were to count all the rock bands that there were in classic rock's heyday, let's call it the end of the 70s, there are so many more bands now, and these bands have released so much more music than how many albums did the Beatles do? 9?
I don't know.
Or 10? Zeppelin only did 6 or something. There's a shelf life for some of these bands, but because, like I said, the alarming rate, you can get music out and get it produced and get it put on a vinyl and put it out to your public. There's just so many more bands now that you need, I think, to categorise them. You need
because
there's just too many.
What happens today? You're going to Google everything. You're gonna search for stuff, and there's so many things that have been produced since the beginnings of rock to now. Since we talked about Fats Domino, Bill Haley, and those guys since the 50s to now. There's so much has been produced. If you just say, "Oh, it's all rock." Gosh, how am I? How can I possibly navigate through all of that? How can I find things that I like? So the classic rock genre kind of helps you to go there and say, okay, I don't think that's classic, but I understand where you're coming from.
I can see how you put this band in the same.
It makes sense. I don't think anyone has just called something classic out of the blue. I think that's classic. There's a reason why people say that.
Cool. Well, I think that nicely summarises what's been a good hour of chatting about what we think classic rock is and our opinions on the new wave of classic rock. So let's end this episode with a couple more segments. In the celebration of what we're doing, we're going to ask Johnny Della for one of his top 5s. So in this segment, what we're going to do is we are going to ask Johnny for his top 5 new wave of classic rock bands. So Johnny, if you just want to list them off from your 5 number to your 1 and tell us why you think these guys are the ones who are carrying the torch of the new wave of classic rock.
Well, first of all, I would put you guys in the top 5 any day. But,
he means Jack with us.
If
you don't know him, Jack J. Hutchinson.
Yeah, the Jack J. Hutchinson band it's got to be in there. So it's going to be like a top 6 because you guys are right in there. Like, because I've been following you for such a long time, and it's the music has just steadily got better and better, and you've progressed from the blues rock to more the stuff that I prefer, like the heavier side of it. But I've just made a list because there are so many bands that I love so
at least 42.
It's probably even more that aren't listed on it, but it's a tough one, and it's like if someone says, "Oh, what's your favourite record by a particular artist?" For me, it changes every 5 minutes. It's like, "Oh, I love that," and then suddenly the next day, "Oh, it's something else." But at the moment, the ones that I'm really excited about are at number 5. I'm putting in Etherfield. They're a heavy new prog rock band, but it's hard to say that they're just prog rock. If for anyone that knows Stephen Wilson from Porcupine Tree, They are quite similar along that line. It's very progressive stuff, but also very heavy. And it's very accessible music as well. I've only just recently seen these guys at Love Rocks, and as soon as I saw them, it's wow. These guys are great. I love them. So I've got the record and been playing that non-stop. Number 4, I've put down Empire. My mates Empire. They're another band that are just not your standard, as we say, classic rock band. There's a lot of proggier side to them as well. That they, in fact, I did mention to them once that their sound reminds me of a genre that I've never heard of, that I've made up myself. I don't think they were too keen on it, but I called them grunge prog because they've got a real earthy sound, but they've also got like a prog feel to them. So I'm really a big fan of Empire. Then Mason Hill at number 3. I saw them just recently. They're great, young up and coming Scottish band, and they really are in the true sense of like a classic full out rock band. They got catchy tunes, and they just they're just a good straightforward rock band. They're so good live, and the new album is just incredible. And then at number 2, Those Damn Crows. They've just come on from strength to strength. They've now got 2 albums out, and they just seem to get, when you see them live, they put so much effort into their shows.
Yeah, they're a good live band, aren't they?
Yeah, Shane, as a front man, he steals it every single time. But the music is good that they play. They've got great songs and they're great musicians. So I'm putting them at number 2 because they never fail to deliver whenever I've seen them.
Drum roll, number 1.
I don't have any drums.
Use your legs.
And at number 1 is Massive Wagons. They're they're right at the top of their game now, and they're still like a young band, but everything they put out is just spot on. It's the music that they play, it's so catchy. They always put a smile on my face, whatever they're singing about. They've got a song called about curry, but it works. They're a bunch of lads that they love what they're doing. They've had to quit their day jobs to put everything they possibly can into making it work, and just for that alone, I think they deserve to be at number 1.
There we go. Well, it's very similar. We're going to tie this into the next segment because it's very similar, but I know everyone loves the music, so we'll do a quick transition. Here is this week's episode, and I always say episode, this week's segment of Feed the Drummer. So as I said, this ties over. Johnny, you want to take it away? So Johnny's going to feed Felipe with a new wave of classic rock band that he feels Felipe should check out, and he'll tell you the reasons why.
Yeah, well, I was just talking about Massive Wagons, and really, you need to get into them. They've got, Alex on the drums is like, he really pounds it out the whole show. It just rocks all the way through. It is never any let up with them. They're just always full on. And as I said, the songs that they play aren't your normal, just, they do their love songs, but they do songs about Facebook and like about food, about like whatever you think like wouldn't work in a rock world, it works though.
Yeah.
But isn't that what rock's all about? You just talk about whatever you want to talk about. It's not. Yeah. It's not
musical freedom.
Yeah, musical freedom.
Yeah.
So let's come to one of their gigs, Johnny. You know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the next time I see them is going to be Saturday night.
Oh, you're going to see them? Oh, great.
Yeah.
What we'll do is, I'm going to ask Johnny for his favourite song from each of those bands, and we're going to put it in the playlist. So you're going to see at the bottom of the show notes, there'll be a link to a Spotify playlist where every band we've spoken about today, there'll be one song on from them, or if we've mentioned a specific song, and I'll get Johnny to do his favourite song from each of those 5 bands, and that'll also be in the playlist. But I think that's a great way to finish the episode. Does anyone have anything more to say about classic rock? We're in agreement that classic rock cannot be defined simply by one band, by one era, by one genre, by one attitude. But it seems we are all in agreement that the new wave of classic rock is a wholly positive thing for the industry and the rock music in Britain at this time.
Yeah, I think using the word classic, you want to tell people that whatever's being produced now is really relevant. And if it hasn't been around for long enough, it means you're calling it classic because you believe it will survive the test of time.
Yes, you believe it does have the capability and the strength of art to become classic eventually.
Exactly. So that's an interesting thing. Anyway. So yeah, I would say that's really interesting to have Johnny with us, and you added so much to the show. I just want to keep doing this episode until next week.
But unfortunately, we've got a gig. We've got a gig to go to.
Unfortunately, we've got a gig.
I say that, only that we can't. We love gigging, but yeah, so I would just love to talk about this all day, especially with a guy like Johnny. But Johnny, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Honestly, thank you for having me.
No problem. Fantastic. It's been brilliant. We've really enjoyed it.
This is what we do in the car all the time, though, isn't it?
But this is what I've told our listeners. We've spent 5 years of me and him in the car, either with Jack, with you, with our other musical directors, chatting so much about music, and then I told you it was a musical director from our other show said you guys should start a podcast, and so now here we are. And thank you for being our guest.
Thank you so much for having me on. I've really enjoyed it.
No problem. Well, thanks for everything you've contributed. It's been wicked. So thank you guys for joining us on this episode. We hope you've had a good time. Our social media, give us a follow if you can. We are at longliverocknrollpod on Instagram and Twitter, and you can search the Long Live Rock and Roll Podcast on YouTube and Facebook and get to our accounts. And our website is also available. It's longliverocknroll.buzzsprout.com.
I just want to say thanks to everyone who's been following us, because to be honest, we started this really, we just wanted to have a good time and to share some of our thoughts with people who might like what we're talking about. And I'm quite impressed with the amount of people who are downloading the episodes and following us, and actually, starting conversations about this. So thanks a lot for your support. Please let us know what you think about this. Feel free to criticize us. Feel free to disagree. Disagree. That's what the show's all about.
Criticize them, not me.
No, not Johnny. No, you can't say anything about Johnny. You're going to be banned. But yeah, please say whatever you want to say about the show. Spread the word, and thanks a lot for supporting us. And keep on rocking, everyone.
And as usual, take care and long live rock and roll.